So, okay, I'm going to start recording now. So the thing that all of you guys have in common is that you're all going to be taking the what we call the passport to success, and where you're going to be assigned to meet with different people at different times and go through a bunch of things. So as much as possible, what I would like to be able to do is go through things as a group, because as a group, I think it's important you guys get to meet each other, and it gives you a little bit of someone to talk to back and forth type of thing, right? So on Forms 101, the website one? No, that's at noon. Yeah, this one's on Forms 101. I don't think you need that one. So that was Jackie Chiliak thought this one was the MoxieWorks CRM one. So she's actually a broker, so I think she's got the forms down pat. And then we got Linda Oathwaite. Linda, how are you? I thought that too, yeah.
Hi.
Are we going to get to see your smiling face today?
You can see my smiling face? I hope not.
No, I said, are we going to get to see your smiling face?
No.
Okay. Okay. You're having that bad hair day too?
Always in the morning, always.
Okay. So we are recording this. So for whatever reason you guys have to skip out, obviously you can do that. The thing I like to do with this, the big thing I like to do is we go through the forms, and I know you guys will see the forms, but as I've said to most of you guys will learn more on the street than you will actually during your course. And the reality is, why do we need the forms? What is it about these forms that make them the special forms that we need? And that's really what I want to talk more than anything about. And certain phrases and clauses that are in these forms that you need to understand. This is the reason why they're here. So I sent you guys forms for those of you who don't have access to Matrix. For those of you who have access to Matrix, hopefully you have these forms. But if you don't, I can quickly send them to you if you need to. But I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to go through them starting one by one. And I guess I'll start by saying, is there anyone that has any questions right now before we get started?
Did you send them as an attachment to the email, Gary? Because I don't think I got them.
No?
No,
Okay.
I'm just looking.
Okay, let me. I can have them to you real quick. From a guy who gets obviously too many emails. Create web forms. LV, boom, 1. Okay, and then that one. So I'm sending you 2 batches. One is for buyers and one is for sellers.
Okay, perfect. I'll just be looking at my email. So.
Okay, you should have them now. They are each about 14 different files on each one of them.
Got them.
Oh, Gary, I think I'm missing one. I only got one set
Which one did you get?
of the sellers.
You got the seller one?
Yeah.
DD. Boom, you should have both now.
Great, thanks.
Okay. And the rest of you guys all have access to Matrix, and you should be able to have them yourself. Oh, here comes my last. I knew I was going to get one more. Oh, slide them open. There we go. That's funny. Nope, that's fine. That is fine. So now joining us live is Andrew Maynard. And Andrew's been with us now about 2 months. But in the meantime, after licensing, he went through the Christmas break and having a baby, and is just really getting started here in the last week or two. So welcome, Andrew. And are you going to go on your laptop, or do you want the forms, or you'll just watch the screen and stuff that we're doing here as well? Okay. And then I see Don Tang has now come on as well. So welcome, Don. And Don's been with us for a few years, and he's part of the Don and Wayne are a team, and they're like our second highest producing team. So I think Don's got it all under control with the forms as well, but I'm sure like everything that we do, you always can have more training. And if there's something that you missed before or have any questions, we're always here for you. So, okay, I'd like to get started now. We're about 6 minutes into it. So I'm going to start with the, I'm going to do a share screen here, and we're going to start with the agency disclosure or the agency disclosure. So this is the form. Let me just see. Get that out of the way there. Okay, so I assume everybody can see it?
Yep.
There we go, get you guys that way. Okay, so the agency disclosure form is a form. This is the, if you watch cop shows, this is the Miranda rights. This is how you explain the rules of the game to your buyers and to your sellers. So if you watch cop shows and you hear about Miranda, it's anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law. Well, in real estate, that's kind of the same phrase. We look at the agency disclosure form as to giving us the rules of what you can and what you can't say, and who can say things, etc. The big things to remember on this form is the seller's brokerage is expected to, and then obey all instructions that are lawful. So they have to, if a client tells you to do something, if it's a lawful instruction, you have to take that advice. You have to represent their best interests. You have to fully disclose any known facts that may influence your decision, maintain their confidentiality, safeguard their documents and money, and exercise reasonable care and diligence. Now, if you scroll down to the buyer side, guess what? It's the exact same thing. So what is the difference? There is no difference. Anytime you have a client, you owe these fiduciary duties to your client. And as far as the commission is concerned, it's something that you always have to take into consideration whenever you're putting in a deal. It should be the first form that you sign, and you should read the brokerage is expected and the buyer's agency is expected. You should read those to your clients every time. In the event that your brokerage is both the buying agents and the selling agents, then there's limit to dual agency. And it's important for you to explain to that, sir, I represent the buyer and I represent the seller. Anything you say won't be used against you because I'm limited dual agency, okay? The reason I say that is if you tell me that you're willing to pay full price, but you want to start at $10,000 less, I can't go to the seller and say to him, oh, by the way, they're willing to go full price. What I can say is, here's his initial offer. We'll go through the pros and cons. If you don't believe that this offer is fair, then you can come back with a counter offer. And the same with the seller. If the seller says to you, well, I'll accept anything that's up to $10,000 under my asking price, you can't go to the buyer and say, oh, by the way, he'll accept $10,000 less. So the buyer and the seller need to come up with a price on their own based on CMA information and based on markets that they've seen and their experience. Your job is to make sure that the possession dates, the terms, the conditions, the paperwork, and everything else that goes with this are done properly. So price is one thing, but it's not everything, and especially when it comes to limited dual agency. So the other thing that I wanted to point out is the one right after that, when there is no agency relationship. Can anyone come up with a scenario where there would not be an agency or a customer service relationship?
Visible.
For sale by owner, classic example, okay? Someone who comes to your open house, they're just a customer until they become a client, right? They may want information. Anyone who's representing themselves, you still owe a fiduciary duty of responsibility to them, but you don't owe the anything you say can and will be against you clause. So if a FSBO says to you, I'm asking 300, but I'll take 290, you take that directly to the buyer and say, he's asking 300, but he'll take 290, because that's your obligation to do so. He does. So what is important for you to say is, sir, anything you say to me, or ma'am, anything you say, I take directly to the buyer. So tell me what it is. Now, keep in mind, you can't hide things from us. There's still a fiduciary duty for you to look into things, to find out taxes, square footages, all the rest of that kind of stuff. And the liar can't buy, the buyer or the seller can't lie to each other, and you can't lie to anybody either. So they don't have to tell you. So that's, if you want to say lying by omission, but they can't purposely hold things back. And if there's something wrong with the house, they have to tell you if there's something wrong with the house. Okay, it's part of the other contract, and we'll get into that a little bit in a little while. Okay, the honesty and integrity, the professional services, those are all things that if you ever get taken to task as far as the real estate commission is concerned, the first thing they're going to look at is your professional services. How did you act? How did you treat the parties? And were you being responsible? And if you weren't, that's the first thing they're going to charge you with every time. Then they're going to look at if there was fraud or any other mishaps from there, but they're going to look at your professional misconduct as your first thing. Okay. Pretty simple form. First thing you get an initial on the first page, you get signatures on the second page. I go into all of my forms and I pre-fill in as much as I can so I don't forget. And so I've got Century 21 Fusion filled in on my template so that anytime I make a kit, it automatically fills into there. So does anybody know who made this form?
The commission.
Sorry?
I was the real estate commission.
Nope, close. It's right on the top here.
Oh.
So look for the logos, okay? So logos are going to give you a hint as to who made these forms. Anything that is the commission is a mandatory form. There's the association, and then there's CREA. So this one is developed and provided to you by the Association of Saskatchewan Realtors, which is now known as the Saskatchewan Realtors Association, SRA. So they're the ones that make this form. You do need to have it in all of your documents. And then the other place that you'll look at that it's a CREA web form, so it's provided by CREA, but it wasn't made by them. Okay. Any questions on this one? If you're looking it up, it's file 205 if you're trying to do the quick look, or agency disclosure, not to be confused with disclosure of interest in trade, which is when you buy or sell a house. So they both have the word disclosure in them, so you could search disclosure and then pick it from there. Okay. Both parties, buyers and sellers, even FSBOs, will have to sign an agency disclosure. And if you're doing a FSBO, I would get the FSBO to acknowledge this part right here. When there is no agency relationship, I would get them to initial that to make sure that they understand that that's been what's been told of them, that they do not have a client relationship. It's only a customer, and therefore anything they say can and will be used against you in the negotiations. Okay, I'm going to go on to ancillary services. The ancillary services form is a mandatory form. And why is that? We look in the top left-hand corner, it says the Saskatchewan Real Estate Commission. When the commission makes a form, they are the watchdogs of us, and they make sure that we have it filled out properly. So always look for that, okay? Now, they've highlighted it or bolded it at the bottom here. Please initial the items that you wish to proceed with in the purchase of this property. The important thing here is, this is what starts your conditions. What conditions are you wanting to put on the house, sir? Well, let's go through this ancillary service and give you an idea of what conditions are available for you to put in here. The first one is you're subject to financing. Is financing important to you? Yes, it is. Okay, you're going to have to initial here. Do you want a separate electrical inspection? Do you want a separate engineering report for whatever reason? An environmental report, which is more commercial than anything else? Do you want a furnace or chimney inspection? A gas line locate? Or a home inspection, which would include, and then you go through and include what would be included in a home inspection. Do you want a municipal compliance report? Does anyone know what the other name for a municipal compliance report is? Have you heard the initials PID yet? A PID from the city? So a PID from the city, it costs $20 to get them. And the office pays for all the full services. They get that if you ask for it in the offer. And then the property information disclosure and a municipal compliance report are the same thing, just called differently in Saskatoon versus other places. You'll either get a SAMA report, SAMA, or a Saskatoon report, and it will show the permits that were taken out for the property and when they were. So if you're looking to see if the suite is legal, if the garage had a permit built, when the house was built, that kind of stuff, the PID or the municipal compliance report will tell you that information. The property condition disclosure statement is the form that's filled out by the owner. And this is a form that they, to the best of their knowledge, fill out if there's any problems been with their house. If they have never lived in the house, they can waive this. This is not the PCDS is not a mandatory form. It's highly recommended, but not mandatory. If they deny to do it, it does not alleviate the responsibility to still give you information that they know if there was any problems with the house. So if there was water, roof leakages, electrical, plumbing problems, just because they're not filling out the PCDS, if they know that and they purposely don't tell you, you can still go after them for 6 years after you purchase the house. And when buyers and when sellers think that they can get away with it, just keep in mind, their neighbors will tell everything. When the new buyers move into the house, they'll be the first ones to come over and say, hey, you know, if you ever need a shop vac for when that water comes in, you just let me know. And they'll go, what are you talking about, water? They never told me anything about water. Oh, every spring it floods in the basement and he uses my shop vac, but you use mine, no problem, buddy. Okay? And that's what's going to tell you more about that house than the owner sometimes will. So like I said, just because they don't fill it out, so always ask for it. Even if they don't offer it, always ask for it, because you never know if they will fill it out or not. The surveyor certificate or a real property report. So that's a form that shows the outlines of the lot and the house and the dimensions from the house to the lot lines, and make sure that the house is actually sitting on the lot properly. It will also show you whether there's a garage or anything built on there as well. And the sellers don't need it to sell, but the buyers can use it for purchase because it saves them buying one, or it saves them buying title insurance, which costs them $400 to $500. So again, always ask for one if they've got it. For acreages, they've got the septic and well septic and well tests that you can do. If they have a wood burning fireplace, you normally will have to get a wet certified inspector. So not a home inspector, but someone who inspects fireplace, and it's called a wet certified, W-E-T. I think it's W-E-T-T actually. And they will have to come in and certify that this is done. The biggest reasons for wood stoves to make sure that they're compliant is for insurance. Your insurance for having a wood stove or a wood fireplace usually bumps your insurance premiums about 25%. So they can be very expensive to have. If you want a specific roof inspection, if you want a GST opinion. So lots of times there's questions about whether there should be GST or not included. And if they don't know, then that's something they should have here. And then everything that they initial in here should be a condition on your offer to purchase. So these two forms go hand in hand with your offer to purchase. And then if there's anything else that they have any inquiries about that they want you to do, then you would get them to fill out the other part as well. And then they initial this bottom box here. This buyer's brokerage has explained the potential implications of not completing any of the home inspections, and he has chosen to decline them. So they have to initial that box saying that everything that's been left open, he's chosen to left open and not make it conditional to. And then of course signs it from there. Is there any questions about the ancillary services form? No? Okay. Let's go on to the residential offer to purchase. Who makes the residential offer to purchase, you might ask? Well, if you look at the bottom left-hand or top left-hand corner, it says the Real Estate Commission. Therefore, it's a mandatory form. I commonly say to people, you know, you could probably write this on a napkin and it would go through, but the reality is you can't write a contract on a napkin as a realtor. A buyer and a seller could, but we can't. We have to fill out a form. We have to use the proper forms. Where this comes into a problem is when you're working with new home construction. Lots of new home builders want to use their own forms. What I'm telling you is the best way of doing that is you write a residential offer to purchase form, and then you in there state that with it, on page 2, you'll say that there's other forms. You will state that there's a contract, the builder's contract forms part of this offer and supersedes this offer to purchase. So if there's something within in the buyer's contract, then that's the one that will go through. If you talk to most lawyers like our offer to purchase better than the builders. The builders usually are one-sided contracts, and they'll have something in there that's in favor of the seller versus the buyer, the builder versus the buyer. So that's why they don't really like them sometimes. And sometimes builders do take advantage of a little clause in there once in a while, whether it be a substitution clause or a possession date not guaranteed clause or something to that effect. So you do have to watch those clauses. Anyway, for the majority of you guys just doing single residential properties, this will be the form that you fill out. Of course, you put your buyer's name, address, postal code, your seller's name, address, postal code, etc. The real estate companies have to be in there as well. Please remember that when you're filling out these forms and you're using the web form system, they don't always transfer all the information over. So don't assume just because you put Century 21 and your name in there that it actually put it into the proper spots. It may or may not have put your phone number in there. It may or may not have put the address in here. So if you look at the bottom one, for example, it's put Gary Bush and Fusion and all that in there, but on the top one, it didn't do it. It didn't autofill it. So then I would have to go back and put all that information into the top. So depending on who you're representing. The next 2 lines here, one is a civic address and one is a legal address. When we sell real estate, we are not selling a civic address. We are selling a parcel number. Parcel numbers are received at ISC, which is land titles. So just because it's called 123 Anywhere Street, you do not sell 123 Anywhere Street. You sell parcel number 124,794 and anything that's attached to it, right? As realtors, we sell dirt and any chattels or attachments to that dirt. So the most important thing on an offer to purchase is the parcel number. Make sure it's nice and clear if you're handwriting them. Make sure the typing of it and the information is correct, and making sure you're checking on your tax records and on ISC that you have the proper thing, because that's more important than the actual address of the house. Okay. The offer to purchase now, as far as the rest of it is well, the numbers here, obviously. If you were to put numbers in here, for example, if you put this in, it automatically writes it in there. So there's some autofill options for you, and that's kind of cool. But when you go to change it, just make sure that it changes as well. The deposit is probably the thing that we have the most concern with right now and the most trouble with. And the thing with deposits is the real estate commission, their lot in life is to make sure that our trust deposits are correct and there's no issues, because we are holding money in trust for somebody else. So it's really important, and this offer to purchase needs to get changed. And so we're having problems with the deposit, and I'll show you why. So deposit is now held by check or cash, because of course everyone carries around $10,000 in cash and everyone has a check in their back pocket. Not, right? So that used to be the way. Everybody used to have checks with them, or they'd give you cash. But now e-transfer or some type of electronic transfer is the more preferred way of doing it. So we need to have a way of doing this. What this is saying is, I have received a check or cash, which is received by the brokerage and hereby acknowledged to be deposited into the account within 2 business days. Okay, so you have a check 2 business days. If you get it on a Saturday, that means you have Monday and Tuesday to actually get it in. And it is to be held in trust and to be credited on account of purchase of money pending completion of other termination or termination of this contract. So a deposit is there as to hold the property in the event that you remove conditions and you don't follow through with the deal. The seller gets those that deposit. If something goes wrong with your offer, you don't get your financing, something with a home inspection, they get their deposit back. So what some companies are now doing is they're saying, well, why do we have to have a deposit up front? Why don't we get the deposit upon removal of conditions? So you'll see some people, they're going to put it in this section here, what's called 1.2E, called other financing or conditions, where they're going to put the deposit in there. They're either going to state that it's a e-transfer, or they're going to put that it's upon removal of conditions. The only problem with that is they're not getting the rest of this verbiage in here. So if you state in here, e-transfer upon removal of conditions, you no longer have the 2 days because you didn't ask for those 2 days. You have to put the 2 days in there if that's something you want. Otherwise, the day that you do the removal of conditions is the day that that money has to be in our trust account. So an e-transfer or a money order can go directly into, or wiring the money can go directly into our accounts, and we have record of it. But if it's a check or anything else, it needs to be deposited. And then it takes about 14 days to clear that deposit. We do checks every single day. So you need to have this discussion with your buyers at the beginning. Write down, where's this deposit money coming from? Have it available, have it in your account, whether it be checking or whether it be e-transfer available, but it's got to be ready. It's got to be liquid, as I say, because when we make an offer, I'm recommending to you guys that you get a deposit from your clients when you get an accepted offer. Don't wait for the removal of conditions. It creates a lot of other hassles because in the event that they're late, it actually voids the contract. So if in this market, especially when the buyers and sellers are so hot and there's so many people going after a house, that might trigger a backup offer. It might give someone the moment to pause and say, well, if I can get out of this one, maybe I'll go on a different, I'll pick someone else because I really didn't like this possession date. And in the last week, I found someone else who's interested and will pay me more, right? So don't give them a reason to break the contract. So that's probably the most important part of this, of the numbers, is the deposit, and make sure that the wording that you have in B, if you're not going to use B and you're going to put it into E, you either put it in E, or the catch-all phrase, if you ever run out of space everywhere else, is to put it on a Schedule A. Okay, and a Schedule A is a blank form that has the buyer's and seller's name, and anything can be put in there. Terms, attachments, chattels, things extra, couches, that kind of stuff. Anything that's extra goes on a Schedule A. Okay, we're going to move on to conditions. So,
Question.
Oh, is there a question?
Yeah, Andrew.
Go ahead.
It's more of a banker question, but I'm just wondering if anybody's come across this. When they go to do their e-transfer, is there a way for the bank to give them access to $5,000 rather than $2,000, $2,000, $1,000? That's kind of a issue I'm having right now. I just don't know if you go to your banker and say, hey, by the way, I'm putting a deposit down on a house. Can I have an increase in my transfer?
Okay, so I'm assuming that this is Andrew speaking.
Yes, I said Andrew at the start.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. I don't see you on any of the, oh, there we go. Okay, you're a cartoon character.
Yes.
Okay, so deposits for e-transfers are 100% based on the bank and the ability to pay of the buyer. So some people can transfer as much as $10,000 at a time. Most are restricted to only $2,000. So if they know they're going to do a bigger one, like a $5,000 or a $10,000 one, they will have to make arrangements with their bank to be able to do it. Otherwise, they will have to do, sometimes they're limited to per day, and sometimes they're limited per transaction.
Okay.
So they might be 5,000 a day, but only 2,000 or $2,500 at a time. So they might have to give you two $2,500 ones on the same day, and then they have to go the next day and do another $2,500 and another 25 to make the 10.
Yeah.
So
I guess
again,
just a conversation to have at the start, like how are we going to do the deposit and what are your limits?
exactly. When
Okay.
you're sitting down with the clients right up front, when you're first meeting with them, the discussion is, ultimately these are things that are going to have to be done and discussed. Let's talk about it now. Where is this deposit coming from? Oh, my mom and dad are getting it to us. Okay, well, now that's a third party, right? So there's triggers. Oh, it's in RSP. Oh, it's going to take a while to get out. Like, you got to find out where this money is And it's not an offensive thing to ask the question. And remember, you're the professional. You have to ask the questions. They will give you the answers. A lot of people I've talked to say, well, that's personal. Well, yeah, buying a house is personal. You need that information. 99.99% of the time, they will give it to you. It's very, very rare that they will not give it to you. And if they don't give it to you, then I'm going to ask other questions as to the validity of them doing this transaction, because now they're trying to hide something. So
Yep.
anyway,
Okay.
okay. So with the conditions, the very first one, the 2.1 says that if it's a condo, Schedule C forms part of this contract. In Saskatchewan, you cannot make an unconditional offer on a condo. It has to be conditional to the Schedule C. You can make an unconditional offer on a house. You don't have to have financing or home inspections or anything else. But on a condo, you are deemed to have to get the Schedule C, and that's the estoppel package. And that tells you the financials. It tells you the rules. It tells you everything about the condo association, because now you're buying into a co-op. You're a part owner of a larger group, and you have to have the ability to see that. Now, if it's a current owner of the complex already, and they're buying a second unit in the building, it doesn't mean that you can't put that condition in and remove it the same day. But it has to be there so that the Real Estate Commission's rules are, they have to have it subject to the Schedule C. It has to be in there. Other than that, the next part of this offer is always subject to, remember, when something is made as a condition has to have the word subject to at the start and a finish date. If it doesn't have a date, then it's a term, and it shouldn't go in this section. So it has to be a date that's removed. The dates that are there and the offer that you make, for the most part, all of those conditions that you put in there are for the benefit of the buyer. So the buyer is the person who's going to have to remove the conditions. If you put a condition for the seller in there, then the seller will have to remove that condition. So for backup offers, et cetera, sometimes the seller puts a condition in there. The seller does not have to sign the removal of conditions to be legal, but it is best practice, according to the Real Estate Commission, to get both the buyers and the sellers to sign the removal of conditions. It is not a general practice, though, in our industry to get the sellers to remove the conditions or to sign a removal of conditions. So when you're taking your course and you're going through exams, they want both the buyers and sellers to sign the removal of conditions. But in real life, only the people who put the conditions on have the ability to remove those conditions. The sellers, you're getting them to sign to acknowledge that it was done on time. Our concern with that is that the sellers don't sign it and say, oh, that's a way for me to get out of the contract, which it's not. But anytime you say that it's mandatory for someone to sign something before it becomes a legal contract, now it gives them an excuse not to go through with it. So that's the reason why we're not recommending to say that the sellers have to do it. But if someone requests it from you and your sellers have no problem doing it, then it's okay to do it. A lot of people ask me the question is, well, where do these come from? Where do the offer or the conditions come from? There is a clauses and phrases section within the system here, and you just click on the clause and you go in there and you pull out whatever personal clause you want. I've got some personal ones in here. Appliances being, oh, that's a term, home inspections, PIDs, etc. And you can insert those anytime you want. So let's just go with this one. And it will automatically put it in there, right? But it doesn't put the date, so you still have to put the date in there. Other people ask me, what can I make it conditional to? And my phrase always is, you can make it conditional till the sun rising in the north if you want. As long as both buyer and the seller agree to it, it works. So try not to be a lawyer when it comes to conditions. Try to be an English speaking person who says, do the buyers understand it? Do the sellers understand it? What is it conditional to? If someone says, I need to get certain money out of an account before I can go through with this, then that can be a condition, subject to the buyer being able to get his money released from this bank institution by March the 15th. That's a condition. It's not a traditional condition, but it's a condition. subject to mom and dad's approval if mom and dad have to come see the property. So your normal ones, your financing, your home inspections, your PID, PCDSs, everyone puts those in. But you can make other things in there, and all conditions have to go in here. Unless you run out of room, then they go to where? The Schedule A. Okay, that's the place where everything goes to die. The terms. Anything that's a term is things that are included in the house as far as what might be considered a condition, but there's no date on it. So a term, for example, would be when your property condition disclosure statement, you put that in as a condition because you want to see it, but you'll also want to put it in as a term to say that the property condition disclosure statement forms part of the offer. So anything that they've said on the condition statement goes with the offer to purchase. But you might also state there that you need the move-in sheets for the tenants. You might need to have the contract for the tenants. There's a lot of things that can be terms that you put in there, but anything that's a term needs to be put on a Schedule A because there's really not much space here in number 3 for terms. Again, something we're working on our new forms. If there is additional things like a builder's permit or a builder's contract, additional terms are here or not here, and this is where you indicate that there's more things to be looking for, okay? On number 4, on closing, this is our possession date. You got to remember, you got to put in a time here, AM or PM. Not all law offices are open at noon. So sometimes noon is not a great time to be putting in a date there. Something maybe at 11 or something at 1:30 might be better because couriers and noon hours and stuff sometimes have issues. If it's at 9 o'clock in the morning, that means that the money has to be from the other lawyer the day before, and it may or may not have got there. So, and always tell your clients when you're filling out this form, this is the date of possession. That does not mean you get to move in a minute afterwards, because guess what? Life happens. And you need to be able to say to these people, we get possession, we're going to go do a walkthrough, but I don't want a moving truck sitting out front here at $250 an hour, waiting for the keys to be released over a lunch hour when a law office gets closed or a courier got delayed and we don't have the money and permission to do this. So try to remember that when you're making your offer in the first place. What day do you want to move in? We want to move in on the Friday. Let's take possession on the Thursday then. In case something happens, in case the house isn't clean enough, in case there were some other issues that came up, so that you can actually have a day and some breathing room, or at least don't book the mover till 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Because I can tell you, it gets ugly at noon with a moving truck backed on there, a crew sitting in there having their lunch and telling the owner, you're being billed at $250 an hour. We're just going to sit here, or we're going to unload your shit on the driveway, but you got to get into this house. And we're sitting there calling lawyers, they're saying, well, the money hasn't come. And the other lawyer's saying, well, we sent it. And then they're calling the courier. Oh, he's delayed. Oh, and then it turns out it was sitting on the desk of the lawyer's office the whole time. So those are real life world things. So I'm telling you right now, every time you make an offer to purchase, make sure your buyers understand that is the time that is supposed to happen. There is no guarantees it happens on that time. 80% of the time, it does. But the 20% will make you look bad, and it will just put a damper on the whole deal when possession dates go bad. Okay. Adjustments. Everybody always asks this question as well, and make sure that you tell your seller or your buyers all taxes, rents, insurance, utilities, all have to be adjusted by possession date. So the lawyers will actually take, if you had a $360 tax bill, they will, if the one person's lived in it for 200 days, that means the other person's living in it for 165 days, and they split the taxes out accordingly. So that sometimes when they go to the lawyers, when you're starting to quote taxes, and it's like, oh, it was $2,000 more. Well, that was for the taxes that you had to pay in advance. Well, I wasn't expecting that. So make sure you're having the lawyer quote out stuff and make sure that you know that that's an adjustment that could be made. Okay. If the property is rented out, the buyer is not assuming the tenancy. So it's already put in here that the house will be vacant unless otherwise stated. So if you're buying a house with a suite in it or have tenants in it, the assumption is that it's going to be vacant. You're giving up vacant possession, it says right here. And unless it's told differently. Okay. Unless otherwise agreed in writing, the seller will transfer the property to the buyer free and clear of all encumbrances. So all mortgages, any debt owing against the property has to be cleaned up. Okay. The seller agrees to prepare and execute, blah, blah. The rest of this time, so 4.9 is the one that I always like to point out to everybody, where it says, time shall be of the essence. What does that mean? Time shall be of the essence. Anybody? Okay, time is of the essence. This is a time-sensitive document. Anytime you put dates and times in here, it has to be executed within that time frame. So you leave it open for a certain amount of time for acceptance. Those times have to be done in that time. We have offers coming back and they're open till 5 o'clock and the signatures are signed at 5:04. That deal is now null and void because it wasn't signed before 5 o'clock. The conditions for removal have to be done by the 15th of March. And on the 16th of March, the removal of conditions gets entered. Well, that deal is now null and void. Midnight of the date of removal is when so this is a time sensitive thing. So that's what this is all about. You have to make sure you check your dates and your times and make sure that you're not taking it right down to the minute, and make sure you explain to your buyers and sellers that this needs to be done by a certain time. And if not, you need to do an amendment to get a longer period of time to make the signatures happen. As long as it happens in our time zone in the proper time, it can be signed in Australia, which is a different day, but it will be indicated that it's Greenwich Mean Time or whatever. We'll be able to calculate it to make sure that that says it was before 5 o'clock Saskatchewan time. Okay, so don't worry about the digital signatures, but the digital signatures do tell all. Okay, insurance. There must be insurance on the possession date. There must have insurance, so make sure you remind your clients about insurance. And then number 6 is the biggest one that you guys really need to read and understand. So it's warranties and representations. Unless otherwise stated, the seller represents, and to the best of his knowledge, to the buyer that the current use of the land complies with municipal land bylaws. The building and other improvements are not placed partly or wholly on any easements or right-of-ways, and are entirely on the land and no encroachments to the neighbors, except where an agreement is in place. So it's the seller's responsibility that he's making this claim to you. The location of the buildings and other improvements in the land with all relevant municipal bylaws, granted the appropriate municipal act. So this is saying that the non-conforming, did they do basement development? If they have not done basement development permits, then they have to let you know about that, or they have to make arrangements for them to be done. Otherwise stated, the seller represents and warrants the buyer that the seller has the legal right to sell it, is a non-resident of Canada, is not a non-resident of Canada. That 6.2b, if you're dealing with immigrants, is a really important clause, because if they are heading out of the country, there will be a 25% holdback on the value of the house. So on a $400,000 house, they'll hold back $100,000 to make sure that any applicable taxes are paid to our governments before they will be released. And that's what this clause is saying, that the seller is not a non-resident for the purpose of the Income Tax Act. And then the last one is that all attached goods and fixtures that are owned by the seller are to be left in normal working order. So hot tubs included. Possession date shows up, hot tub doesn't work. Said, well, you didn't say it did, you didn't put in there in working order. Actually, it is in there. It's right there in the type print. Lots of people will also write fridge, stove, washer, dryer in working order. It's redundant because it says it's in working order already. So you don't have to put it in there, but it's not a bad idea to put it in there just as a reminder. It is clear of all encumbrances, so nobody owes anything on it, and shall remain free and clear right up until possession date. The purchase price shall include the land, the building, attached goods, unless otherwise and herein following the unattached goods. So if there's shelving, cabinets are a great example. Cabinets are attached to the wall, therefore they're fixed. Anything that's screwed to a wall is fixed. But things that are like pictures that are hung on a wall are not. Well, now we're getting bathroom mirrors are commonly hung on a nail and not framed to the wall. So you have to put mirrors in there. If you were to ask for a surveyor certificate, it would go in here. If you were to ask for the fridge and stove, now some people say, well, just put the word fridge and stove and washer and dryer. I would put existing fridge, stove, washer, dryer as seen January 23rd, whenever we viewed the property, in working order. That way, if something happens to that fridge, they either have to fix it or replace it with another one equal to. Because if you just say fridge, stove, washer, dryer, and there's a white one that's in there, and the next thing you know, there's avocados in there instead that they got at a discount sale, well, they lived up to their obligation of a fridge, stove, washer, and dryer. And they may be in working order, but they weren't the ones that you were anticipating. So some people will even go as far as actually getting the serial numbers off of the appliances. I have never done that, but I use the word existing in my appliances when I put it in there. Is there any questions? Okay. So in addition, then these are the check boxes here. In our new offer to purchase, there's going to be a lot more checkbox things in here. So water heater, water softener, sump pump, alarm systems. Now the alarm systems is the hardware, not the contract. Many agents end up buying out a contract because they assume things. A lot of alarm systems are rented, and so therefore they can't be sold. They have to be taken over by another company. So make sure that you're going through that as well. Any storage sheds, garage door openers, central vacs attachments, etc. And then number 6.4, the buyer and seller acknowledge that except otherwise described in the contract, there are no other warranties, representations, or collateral agreements. So there's no warranties on any of this stuff. It could quit the next day, but on possession date, all of these things need to be working. It's anything that has moving parts, anything, the house could leak the next day. That doesn't mean that the seller lied. It just, that's the way it works. Okay. And then your number 7 is the remedies. Really important for you to know about all the remedies, about what happens with the deposits, what happens with if there is a problem, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure that you're reading all that. And then number 8 is how long you're leaving the offer open till. I would always, in this marketplace, try and keep it as short as possible to give you more leverage for when less offers possibly, unless of course they're having a delayed presentation, then you'll have to leave it open for a little bit longer. And then then your buyers would sign it, and then the sellers will have to sign it before that expiry date. Anytime they get an offer, they have 3 choices. They can accept it, they can reject it, or they can give a counter offer. If they're giving a counter offer, they have to give that counter offer before this expires. Because if this expires and a day later they give a counter offer, the whole deal is null and void. You got to tie these things together, and they have to be done before this removal of condition or acceptance date is expired. Okay. Any questions about the offer to purchase? Jesse, go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Okay, I thought you put your hand up or your finger up, so okay. Okay, so notice to remove conditions. So after you've done all your due diligence, you do the notice to remove conditions. Very simple form. It actually says, with respect to the above mentioned, the following conditions are removed. So everything that you have in your offer to purchase, subject to financing by the 25th, subject to home inspection by the 25th, subject to blah, 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 whatever you have in your offer, that's what needs to get put. You can basically cut and paste everything that's in your offer and put it into here because it says the following conditions are hereby removed. Now, what I like to do, and I like to advise people to do, is if that makes this deal firm and that there's no other conditions, because some people remove conditions, but they don't remove all conditions. And so you're still other things that are going on. When you have that final removal and the sold sign should be going up, I'd like to write the word in there, or the words, this deal is now firm. I don't say that this deal is complete, because complete would mean that it is possession dates happened, but it is firm. Firm meaning the deposit is now on the line. If the buyer backs out, they would lose their deposit. If the seller backs out, they can be sued. Okay. And then both buyer and the seller, as we mentioned, if your buyer's contract, if the buyer put the conditions on, then they do the removal. If the seller do it, then they do it. But you may get asked to have both on there. Amendments. If there's, for whatever reason, you need to do a price amendment on anything, there's an amendment for the offer to purchase. And again, the buyer and the seller agree to this amendment. It's not an amendment unless both parties agree to it. Just going through my notes here, one sec. And yeah. So whatever the amendment is, price, terms, what's included, what's not included, dates, anything like that, all has to be in there. Okay, option clause form. The option clause form is there in case someone has to put an option clause in place, which means the seller can continue to market the property and look at other offers. But if they accept another offer, they have to give these people whatever the agreed amount hours are, 24, 48, 72 hours, to remove all of their conditions, not just one or the home inspection, all financing, home inspections, anything that they have in there, all conditions would have to be removed in that time. And if they do so, then the first buyers still get that house. So that's what the option clause form is about. The Schedule C, that is the schedule for the estoppel package for condos. And it just basically states the buyer and the seller agree. And these are the things that the seller agrees to give or get copies of to the buyer at their expense and by a certain date and time. And then and Schedule Cs have to be removed. If you're dealing with older agents, Schedule Cs used to lapse after 14 days. And so some people still forget that and think that it just falls off the face of the earth. It does not. It is a condition that has to be removed like all other conditions do. The infamous Schedule A. In the event that you run out of space in anything, you always revert back to the Schedule A. You can call it Z, just don't call it C. You can call it A, B, D, alphabet, AA, whatever you want to do. And that's what, and then put in there. Make sure your document numbers are there, your MLS numbers in there, so it ties it together. And then the buyers and sellers' names go in there and everybody signs it as well. Okay, it forms part of the deal. Schedule, service agreement. So you'll hear me talk about once in a while the service agreement, or if I still refer to it as a fee for service, because that's what the SREC bylaws refer to it as, the fee for service. But a service agreement is when you're going after someone who's a for sale by owner, or you're doing a service, maybe you're doing a market evaluation and you're getting paid for it, but it's not actually, there's no trading hands of real estate, or they're not representing somebody and you need to get paid for this. So the fee for service or the service agreement basically states, what is it that you're doing? How much are you charging? And away you go, boom. When it starts, when it finishes, and then we hand that into us, we will then bill the client. If it's $350 you're charging for a market valuation for a bank or something, we put it in here, we submit it to the bank, and we get you paid on that behalf. Okay, simple form, but it's something that's getting used more and more all the time now. Limited dual agency. Limited dual agency is when Century 21 for you guys, when Century 21 is representing both the buyer and the seller. Now keep in mind, we have another brokerage within our brokerage called Barry Chiliak Realty Inc. If you are doing business with Barry, he is a separate brokerage and does not have to have limited dual agency. But anyone else who is a agent with Infusion, you have to disclose if it's the same person acting for both the buyer and the seller, double ending it. If it's the same person under the same branch office. So we have a branch office in Humboldt. We have a branch office on 33rd Street with Lee Brisden in it, and we have this office here. So if it's someone within the same branch office, great. If it's someone without a different branch office, that makes the difference between these two signatures here, or two check marks here. And then you just have to talk about that you will not disclose, the motivation of the buyer to buy, the seller to sell, and you go through that scenario with them and you check those off and make sure that the buyers and sellers both acknowledge it before you proceed any farther. Limited dual, FinTrack, lovely FinTrack. The government in its wisdom says that all real estate agents must be FINTRAC officers. So they are asking us to identify all of our clients. And in doing so, we need to know what address they're buying or selling, who you are, and the date that you collected this information. And then they want their full legal name, their current address, their date of birth, their occupation. And the occupation is important for tracking. You can't just say mechanic. You have to say mechanic at Sherwood Chabot. You can't just say farmer. You'd have to say farmer at section 4, land east of the 30, like blah, 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 go on with your land description, right? So you have to be more specific as to where. If they're retired, retired where? Retired nurse, retired from where? Retired nurse at RUH. Okay, now we're getting somewhere, right? So that's how detailed they want you to be in their occupation. And again, most people don't have a problem telling you that. Then you're going to ask for either their passport or their driver's license or any government photo ID'd document that they can come up with. And you'll get the photo ID number, the type of information it's there. If it's jurisdiction, it should be Saskatchewan, Canada, and the expiry date of it. Okay. You don't do anything with the credit file. You most likely don't have to do the dual process here. Third-party stuff, most times you don't have to get this third-partied. So I actually have a lot of these already pre-checked on mine, but you have to fill out the third-party. Was it done on behalf of somebody else? No. How did you find out? I asked them. When did you do it? That's the date that I did it on. Is there any other grounds you suspect it's for a third party? No. Boom, move on. And then the last part is it a Canadian citizen physically present to you? If not, are they not present to you? Then you have to fill that out accordingly. And then if they're a high risk, so if you think that there's something wrong with this whole deal, the way things are going on, you come and talk to us and we'll fill in the medium or high risk part of it if you're unsure. And then is it a residential or commercial property? These are held in file at our office and are only given out to FINTRAC officers in the event that they ask for them. We don't submit them on a regular basis. And what they're there for is they want to be able to say, you know, we have this fellow, his name is Gary Bush, and he's bought 7 properties across Canada in the last 6 months, and he's flipped them all and for outrageous amounts of money. And so they think that there's money laundering going on. What's your Gary Bush do for a living? What's your Gary Bush's ID? And they're going to take that information, they're going to look at it and go, oh, this is a different Gary Bush, or oh, that's the same guy. And then that's how they piece it all together. So that's where FINTRAC is what it's for. And but again, they've caught people because of it, not through any of our efforts, but that's what they use it for. Anytime you accept money, you have to fill in the receipt of funds record. It's saying the address, the agent, how much money, what kind of currency, where it's coming from. You'll have to put the bank information in here as far as the account number. You'll have to ask your clients, is it the savings account, checking account, what's the account number, and put that information in there. If they're sending you a wire transfer or an e-transfer of any kind, it won't be on, like if you had a check, all that information's on the check. They can give you a void check, which will have the information on it, or you'll just have to ask them for the numbers. An e-transfer does not have an account number attached to it when we get it. So the only way we can find that out is we have to get it from the owners. And so that has to be filled out with every deal that you do. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is our office information form. And the big thing for here, this is setting up your CRM. This is setting up information for the office, and it triggers a bunch of different things. So of course, you're going to put your client's name in there, your name in there, so we know who the heck you're talking about. Their cell numbers, their mailing addresses, and this part right here is really important. I do or do not agree to receive electronic communication from the above agent. And I do understand that I can discontinue receiving these at any time in an opt-out from this communication. We have to have permission to send things electronically to people's emails. This gives us that permission. So they need to have this checked off. They need to tell us what their email address is, and they need to sign this, and we need to keep this on file. It's called PPIDR, the Privacy Act. And so it's done with all of our contracts. It's very important that they give us permission to do that. The reason we have asking if it's a revenue property or not is to whether or not we change in your CRM, that we change the addresses. And then it's, if you know what lawyer they're going to use, it's in here, and then permission to send it to a bank. Banks lots of times ask us, can you send us the offer to purchase and a copy of the listing? We need the permission of the owner of the contract, the buyer, to be able to do that. So make sure you get permission from them to send it to their Royal Bank or whichever bank they're sending it to. And if there's any other information you want to put in there, please do so. And then of course, both of you sign it. Okay, so those are your offer to purchase documents. They should be put into a what I call a transaction kit. And for, oh, sorry. Mine is, I just have them set up as test buyer and test seller right now. And so you should make them up, and you should have all of those forms in that file. And then you make a new kit from there every time you do an offer to purchase, and then it will keep everything straight. Always make a new kit. Don't ever try and reuse an old kit, because then you get cross-contamination of information. And because the web forms are as lovely as they are and they don't really work as well as they should, sometimes you will lose information back and forth. Is there any questions about the buyer's contract so far? Okay. The seller's contracts will take us a lot less time because a lot of it is already, we've already done some of the stuff. So we'll go through just a couple of the forms there. Obviously, agency is the same. An amendment is pretty much the same. The disclosure, we'll talk a little about. Office information is the same. And there's a few other amendments. So the brokerage contract is probably the most important thing that we're going to deal with. And of course, FINTRAC, you have to FINTRAC them as well. But the brokerage contract, this is your permission to advertise and work for this person. So when people say, do I have permission to put a sign up? How do I know if I have permission to put a sign up? It's called a broker contract. It states, do I have permission to put a sign up? It's one of the signs. I allow other members. There are no exclusions. You get permission to put sign and to start advertising. That's what the broker contract is all about. And so you have to fill it out in its entirety. Even though it starts on a certain date, that means that your advertising can't start until that certain date. So when people are doing back pockets, for example, and they're letting people in early, you're no longer protected with your broker contract. So you have to be careful with letting people in early and writing offers on your contract ahead of time before your actual contract gets into place. A lot of this stuff is legal terms about how we get paid, what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do, giving us permission to put the property on realtor.ca and all third-party databases. So this is giving them permission. So with Century 21, if you list it on MLS, it's saying that you're giving them permission to show up on the RE/MAX site, the Royal LePage site, the Realty Executive site, and every other brokerage in the province has access and it can show up on their site as long as they give you credit as the listing brokerage, not you personally as an agent. They have to give Century 21 Fusion. So, and your websites are the same. You have access to everybody's listings on the entire province, and all of those will have to be credited to Realty Executives, RE/MAX Saskatoon, Royal LePage Varsity, whatever they happen to be. Don't have to give the agent's name. Some of them do, but you don't have to give that information out. Again, there's a whole lot of clarity in here on what can and can't be done. So make sure that you read through that. I always add my commissions in right at the start. That way it doesn't become as much of a negotiating factor. So when I present it to them, it's at 642, regardless of what the actual price of the house is. I'm going in at 642. If I have to make adjustments, I can, but I always do the 642, and that's what the brokerage will receive for selling the property. From that, we will give 321 to someone else. Now you can charge different services. Some people charge 5% across the board. Some people charge 2% across the board. It's up to you guys as to what you feel, depending on the price of the house and the services excuse me, and the services that you're going to provide. So here's where it talks about advertising it for the for sale sign and the sold sign and advertising the property. These are check marks that have to be asked for, so they're here. Keep in mind, going back to the commission part of it, when you're offering 3-2-1 to somebody else, that's a contract you're making with another brokerage or with another agent. In the event that let's say it works out to be $10,000. If there's not $10,000 left at the end of the day from paying out the bank, who gets there first, maybe there's only $8,000 left for commissions. The buyer's agent gets theirs first. The listing agent gets theirs last. So when you're negotiating contracts, when you're negotiating deposits, make sure the deposit is as big as your commissions are. That way we have more control over having, and then the client will have to owe us money somehow. But if you make a deal with somebody else, remember, for whatever reason, if things fall apart, the buyer's agent gets paid first, or buyer's brokerage gets paid first, the seller's brokerage gets what's left over. And we've had situations where there was no money left over and our agent ended up doing the deal for nothing. But contractually, they had to pay the 3-2-1 because that's what they advertised to do. And that's what this is all about. Okay. Limited dual agency is brought up in here again as well. Miscellaneous provisions about the sale price, etc., Canadian funds, etc., all in here as well. And then anything that's bold. So in the entire agreement, the broker contract contains means and includes this agreement. And that, sorry, I have to move you guys out of the way here because you're blocking my view. They acknowledge they have received and read the document published by the Saskatchewan Real Estate Association. Agency disclosure. Remember, agency disclosure is the very first thing we went through. This is saying that you've read it to them again. The seller acknowledges and has read and understood this contract and is in agreement to do it. So when they sign it, don't just turn the paper to them and say, sign here. Say, please read the document through. If you have any questions, then sign, because you're saying that you've given them the opportunity to read the contract through. It doesn't even hurt to send it to them a day early blank, just to be able to get it to them. Then of course you have to sign it, you get a witness, they have to sign it, they get a witness. Electronic signatures is the witness, so most people are getting the electronic signature to be the witness. If you're doing it by hand, you can witness their signatures, they can witness yours. Okay. Dates, you can't go more than a year for a date. So if you're doing a longer term stuff, make sure it's a year less a day when you're doing your broker contract. The data form is like the gospel for us. That's where all the information is put on. And so every house has to have a data form, and then there's addendums to condos and stuff that add to the data form, but they all start with the data form. And so they must be filled out. And I use these, I take one of these the very first time I go through a house, I use it as my checklist. And as I'm walking through the house, I'm checking off things like, is it attached or detached? What are your taxes? Is it a house? Are you gonna fill out a PCDS? Is there a surveyor certificate? Is it owner occupied, et cetera, bungalows? And I'm going through, as I'm walking through the house, I'm checking these things off. That's my walkthrough sheet. It gets me thinking about this stuff so I don't have to go back afterwards and say, were those asphalt shingles or were those fiberglass? Right? It's all here. Are we including the fridge and the stove? It gives you the opportunity to have that discussion about fixtures. It has all that kind of stuff that comes to fruition in here. How is it heated? Are your water heaters and furnaces owned or rented? What do you mean? People can rent a furnace? Yes, they can. And they can rent water heaters and they can rent water softeners. And more of it's happening all the time. And the buyouts on these furnaces and water heaters are thousands and thousands of dollars more than what they're worth. So it's a big deal. When someone rents a furnace or water heater, you need to know about it, and you need to be very specific in your listing that those have to be assumed, because otherwise your seller is going to have to buy out that contract. Okay, what kind of a fireplace there is in there, the lot size, either length times width or the square footage, depending on what you have, and square footage or acres. All this information, the size of the garage, all that kind of stuff has to be filled in. Total off-street parking. So if I have a double garage and a double sidewalk or double driveway, that means I get to put 4 in here. Okay, it's what's in the garage and plus the driveway example. Okay. Then I put all of my forms in my rooms in here, and the sizes and the type of style of flooring, and that all goes in here as well. And then make sure you fill out these are forever forgot to be checked off. So again, I check them off ahead of time in my master. When I go to make copies, they're already pre-checked off. So there's no exclusions. Exclusions are people like my aunt might still want to buy my house. Oh, well, what happens if she does? Well, then I'm not paying you any money. Okay, well, that's an exclusion. And all exclusions have to be told to the other brokerages that there's an exclusion on that property, because they may choose not to sell it, or they may choose to say, hey, who's the exclusion? Oh, it's Aunt Sally. Well, Aunt Sally's my client. Oh, well, that's the exclusion. That's his exclusion. So don't ever agree to exclusions. Make them deal with those exclusions right up front. Either they've got an exclusion or they don't. And if they don't have an exclusion, let's put it on the market. If they got an exclusion, let's approach Aunt Sally and make her make a decision, because it's going to hurt the marketing of your property if we put in there that there's an exclusion. And then do you or do you not allow other members of the association the information that contains in the MLS system to contact you in the event that it expires? So this is that expiry thing that everybody talks about. Can you contact an expired? Most people have this checked off so that you can't, because in the past, what was happening, houses were expiring, and they were, the sellers were being bombarded with agents saying, I got a buyer, I got a buyer, I can help you, I can help you. And they were just lying to get the listing, but people were complaining about it. So they said, you need permission to use this information to be able to do that. So what it's saying is, because the people's names, phone numbers, addresses may be on there, you can't use the MLS information to contact that person. Now, what the workaround with some people with that is they will go and flyer that block, or they will go do door knocking on that block. And the important part of that is that they don't go right to that house and that house only, that they can prove that they've done the entire block and that house happened to be on it. And it's, hi, my name is Gary Bush with Century 21. I've got a buyer who's thinking of buying and selling in this neighborhood. Are you thinking, but yeah, and you go through the spiel, right? And so they say, yeah, actually, our house has expired and we are interested. Okay, because remember, the expiry, if it has expired and it's relisted with someone else, they don't owe anybody else any money. But if it's been withdrawn, the 180-day clause is in the withdrawal, and we'll get to that here really quickly. So you have to be careful about if it's been canceled or withdrawn. Okay, if it's been canceled, you owe nothing to nobody. So that's a residential amendment. I mentioned again, it's very simple. It already has pre-programmed 3 things that are there. You're either extending the dates of the contract, you're changing the price, or you're changing other things in here. And then you get them to sell it, sign it. I or Jason have to sign all amendments. Anything that's on a broker contract, they have to sign. Anything that's on the data form, only I have to sign. Okay, so if there was a mistake or a change on the data form, the sellers don't have to sign that, only I do. But if there was something on the contract about the dates, the price, the commissions, anything like that, then both parties have to sign that. We'll quickly go through the PCDS. The property condition disclosure statement is filled out by the sellers to the best of their knowledge. If they refuse to do so, that doesn't make them off the hook for disclosing known defects, okay? The sellers are responsible for the accuracy of this. Do not help them fill out this form. If they ask you questions, should I answer yes or should I answer no? Your comment is, I don't know. How do you read that? Because if you start filling out this form, you now become responsible for their answers. And if they said to them, well, Gary told me to say yes on that, the judge is just going to look and say, okay, Mr. Bush, you're paying for the repairs of this basement or whatever the case may be. If they don't know, there's a section there that says, don't know. We're not asking them to be engineers. We're just saying to the best of your knowledge, because they can be sued up to 6 years after the contract if they lie about what's going on. So when the neighbor comes over and says, hey, do you want to use my shop vac because it gets water in the basement? That kind of stuff is real life and it happens. So there's a thing in here that says the attached property condition statement dated is incorporated. This is an illustration. You are not to be filling in a date here. This shouldn't even have a date here. It's something that we're trying to get out of there. And people fill this in all the time thinking it's the date of the contract. It's not. So ignore that part of it, please. Then you're going to get them to sign it. Either they're doing it or they're not doing it, or they're declining it, or it's a new home construction. So they're going to sign one of these 3 forms and then they're going to go through. Each seller must initial, or the sellers must initial the response, right? If there's 2 parties, one must give the other one permission, and they always start checking it off as a checkbox. And so some people will circle this, will put big asterisks beside it, but make sure you point them out. The the seller's initials must go in the yes, no, do not know, or does not apply category. This is for acreages, for houses, and it just goes through to the best of their knowledge. What is your response? Okay. If there's any explanation, you put it in here, how long they've owned the property for, and then the sellers sign it. When the buyers have seen it, they will then sign it and it forms part of the contract, if that's the way it's written in. Okay. The office information form we've already discussed. You'll do the same one there. The order form. This form is important for us to know what you guys want, what you want us to do on your behalf. So do you want a sign put up? If so, we have 2 different sign systems. Which one are you putting up? Do you want photos installed? Do you want us to order photos for you? Do you want ImmoViewer or Zillow tours, the 3D tours? Are we putting it on Caravan? Do you want a title search? We will request a title search. You're all full service agents. We will request a title search on every listing that you do and give it to you to make sure that you understand what the mortgage was on that property when they bought it. And if they have a $300,000 mortgage and you're thinking of listing it at $280,000, you need to know that, because there may not be any money left at the end of the day. The PID is the city of Saskatoon. The SAMA request is the rest of the province, and that's for your permits, and we will pull those for you. Gas line locates, colored feature sheets if you're wanting them, the listing stats if you're doing that with Hannah. Some people are getting Hannah to do the listing stats. We'll get into that in the marketing a little bit later. And if you want just listed flyers or paper or Facebook ads put out for distribution, we need to know that as well. If you're giving the client air miles, we need to know that. And then any of the comments. This is where you'll put in your comments, the basics about the house. If you want Hannah to write up something nice and flowery and has good SEO and everything else, you can do so. There's a bit of a fee for her services to do that, or you can just write it up yourself. It's up to you. And then your public remarks, this is what the public will see, and the agent remarks is only what the realtors will see. Important form to get done. Sign installation is pretty simple. It's just telling you where to put these signs up. If it's just a normal house, you don't have to fill anything out. If it's a condo, you need to confirm that there's actually permission, because not all condo complexes allow signs to be put up. So you have to have that information and where to put it within the condo. If the owner of the condo doesn't know, then contact the property management company and they will know. Okay, so residential acreage. So the data form for residential is common, and then there's 3 addendums, okay? The acreage one, the land one, and the commercial one, okay? So condos have separate information that you need to fill out. If it's just an empty piece of dirt, that's different information, and then the acreages have different information as well. And then there's a commercial, there should be a commercial one here as well. Anyway, so these addendums are secondary addendums that have to be done as well as the data form. So they make part of it. And then you just go through and fill out the same things in here. And again, it's because this one's for acreage. Acreages are more than 180 acres. and, acreages are less than 180 acres, and there's no income derived from the land. If there's income derived from the land, it would be a farm or a business. There's the commercial one. Same type of thing. So if it's a revenue property, it's not commercial. If it's more than 4 units, then it becomes commercial. And you have to have your commercial license to sell 5 or more units in a complex. The withdrawal or cancellation, I guess I'll briefly talk on. If for whatever reason you want to stop the listing, they have 2 options. One's to cancel the listing, which means you cancel all rights to it. Anyone can list it after that. Anyone can sell it after that. You're not obligated to get any money for whatever reason. Or you can withdraw it. Withdraw it gives you 180 days from the expiration date that the buyer is, or the seller is still under contract with you if they sell it to somebody else. Okay. Another real estate company can't list the property if it's been withdrawn for 180 days afterwards. The board won't even let the documents go into the board. Okay. And so lots of times they're going to want you to cancel it, but you have to explain to them the danger of canceling it because it's your danger, not theirs. They want it canceled for whatever reason, but you have to say, I want to protect myself. I also want to protect the other brokerages clients and the brokerages, because if someone from another company has shown your property to their buyers and you go and cancel it, those buyers can go directly to the sellers and buy that property, and both realtors get nothing. So that's the danger in canceling a listing. Withdrawing is preferred method, of course, unless you're just tired of them and you want to get rid of them, then of course cancel them. And then of course they have to sign it, and it's not canceled until I sign the contract. Okay. So trying, and 3:30 is when, like, the board has to cancel it. We can't cancel it in-house. So we need to get it to the board before 3:30 on any business day to get it canceled for that day.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can the seller cancel it whenever they want?
You have to agree to it, and I have to agree to it. They've signed a listing contract, so therefore we will expect them to do it.
Okay.
So if you as an agent came to me and said, Gary, I agree, I want this canceled, then I'll sign it. If the seller says, Dee Dee's the worst agent I've ever seen, I want to get rid of her, I'm going to say, we will assign another agent to you. Or you didn't give Dee Dee a fair shake, you know, what was the problem? And I'll usually talk to them, because 99% of the time it's a misunderstanding about something. But more often than not, the seller and the realtor have had a conflict of some sort, and they've just agreed to disagree. And they said, you know what, we're done, and we're done with this. So we used to do a lot of council relists, but now with the new way of doing the refresh, we don't have to do that. So the only reason to be filling out a cancellation form is to take it off the market for whatever reason. So we're seeing a whole lot less of them in the last few weeks, and hopefully we won't have to have them anymore. So I'd love it if we didn't have to cancel, but it has to be a mutual thing.
Gary,
Yeah, go ahead, Janet.
can you sign the new contract before canceling the old one, or do you, then in essence, you've got 2 contracts? But I've had people where if you're a little bit sketchy about what they might be doing, I've had them, I think I've only done it once, where they signed the new contract first, and then we went ahead and got the cancellation done on the other one. It was all on the same day, but I had them signed on the new one first.
Right, absolutely. So the thing to remember is there's 2 dates on the new broker contract: when it's signed and when it's effective. So
Right.
normally I would have them sign the new contract effective tomorrow and cancel today, so that it comes off and it comes up fresh the next day, or comes off in the morning and comes up fresh in the afternoon, if that's what you wanted to do.
Right.
But again, right now I would do the refresh because it's way less hassle and way less work.
So they don't have to sign anything for the refresh?
Nope, not at all.
Okay.
Because it doesn't affect the contract at all. So all it
Right.
does is it gives the same effects as a council relist used to. And all you have to do is press the button, same cost, but just a fraction of the paperwork for you, for them, for the office, for SRA, for everybody. So yeah, it's definitely in my opinion, it's a win-win. It was one of the things is when I was president that I was pushing really hard for. So this has taken almost 2 years to come to fruition, this refresh button. So, because as a broker, you can't believe how much time we spent canceling and relisting, and our staff canceling listings and putting the same information right back on, and it skews the stats as well.
Yeah, nightmare. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Good questions. Okay, condo addendum is same as the other. These is to fill in the blanks. And I guess the other thing is the last one we're going to talk about is the X hour notice. So if you have a 48-hour or 24-hour option clause, and then they go and they accept another offer, they give you the X hour notice. That says that according to our contract dated such and such, we hereby give you, and the hours that we needed to give you, this is it. You must have removal of all conditions by that said date. The seller signs it, sends it to you. The representative signs it, and then the buyer receives it. When the representative signs it, that's when your 24 hours or 48 hours kicks into effect. Okay. So what makes contracts binding? There's 3 things. Has anyone got into those yet?
Condition?
Nope. What things have to happen to make a piece of paper a binding contract? Signed, sealed, delivered. That's the common phrase, right? Signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours. So the clients have to sign it. It has to be conveyed to the other agent that it's been signed. And the other agent has to have received the contract. Now it's a firm contract. And where that comes into play is when there's more than one offer in play, and they're giving you counter offers, and you're signing a counter offer. Time is of the essence. It's really of the essence. You got to get your client to sign it. You got to phone the other agent, say, we've signed the counter offer and I've sent you it. Once he's received it, then that deal is conditionally sold. Up until that time, you could get a phone call that says, we're withdrawing the counter offer. Well, my clients have signed it. Doesn't matter. You haven't conveyed it to me and you haven't sent it to me. So therefore, you are too late. I'm sorry. And they'll go and accept another offer. Go ahead, Didi.
So if you send it by email or however you send your forms, is it considered received when you send it? Or what if they decide not to look at it?
Correct. When their server sees it, then it's considered. But I would always text them or call them and say, I've sent you an email. Yes, I've received it. Perfect. We're good to go. Okay. Oh, look at me ignoring my chat button here. Permits, is there? They can call a 1-800 number on the back of the debit card. Oh, okay. That's for the, okay. I have a teacher that worked all over the world. So just put teacher. So no, Janet, you can't just put teacher because that teacher gets a paycheck from a company, some company.
Gary, this guy's been all over. So I asked him that because I said, the office is going to ask for where you teach. And he sent me this big long email with like 6 different places all over the world.
Yeah,
What do I put?
That's fine. His latest contract work. So if it's the Saskatoon Health or the Saskatoon School Board, then that's, if it's the Zimbabwe secondary school, then it's Zimbabwe secondary school. Like if he's all over the world, whoever his last employer was is who they want to identify him as, so they can separate him from someone else who might have the same name.
Okay.
Okay. And then can you sign a new contract before counseling? We've already discussed that one. Perfect. Okay. So remember the signed, sealed, delivered, the signed, conveyed, delivered is really important, especially in the marketplace that we're in right now. Offers and forms that we fill out are one of the most important things that you guys do as realtors. And we get paid a lot of money to do this kind of stuff. We need to read the forms. The questions I get asked, the problems that people get into, more often than not, is because they don't read the form and understand the form. So make sure you actually don't just read the parts that you fill in the blanks on. Make sure you're reading the entire contract so that it makes more sense to you, especially when you're first getting started, so that you can give that information, you will look smarter in front of your clients. It will bail you out when you get into problems, and it's the responsible thing to do. It's the professional thing to do. We want to make sure that everybody has that knowledge. So is there any other questions?
Gary,
Yeah, go ahead.
how do you protect the documents? Like, with my client, I sign everything on hard copy, and then we scan everything, and then we put everything on next one, right?
Correct.
So what do I do with a hard copy that I have on hand right now?
You can either give them to your, depending on the contract, you can either give them to your client or you can shred them. Because
Oh, I see.
yeah.
Yeah, I forgot. I'll ask it when it comes.
Okay, and we have a shredded box here in the office that is secured, that will get taken out to wherever and shredded securely. So you don't have to do one page at a time. They do them in bulk.
Okay, so one more thing, like when you're reading the documents to your client and they sign it, do you give them a copy of what they signed?
Absolutely, you're supposed to. So if you're doing it if you're doing it electronically, then when they sign it, they will be given a copy automatically by Next One system. So therefore, they've got it already. If they have not, if you're doing it by paper, you need to make copies and email it to them immediately afterwards.
Okay, so you can't give them like a piece of paper that is not signed. Like, we keep the signed document with you and then give them one similar but not signed so they can read it?
Correct. It needs to be the signed copy.
Okay.
Yeah, because if they need to reference it for whatever reason, it needs to be signed by them so that no changes have been made.
Cool. I have some more question after we're done with forms.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm at my 11 o'clock limit here. So is anybody else have any other questions about forms? Okay. We'll most likely be doing this again for the next couple Thursdays on some stuff to try and get people going on their for their passports, especially with Andrew and Jesse, who are licensed. We want to get them going, and maybe you two can hook up and help each other through things. And like I said, the rest of you guys are some. I know that Albie had appointment at 10:15, so he had to leave today. But for all of you guys who are getting started here, you might as well get a head start in this stuff so that we can start you running. And so, Dee Dee, you have a little bit of time, but it might help you in some of your studies with some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. It might make more sense when you're actually studying when we're talking about forms and stuff as well.
Yeah. Great.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you guys very much. This is recorded, so if there's something you want to go back on, it will be on our in our library. So for the new people, remember it's century21fusion.ca/training. You no longer have to put the PHP after that. So just century21fusion.ca/training. It takes you to all of our taped sessions, and you can watch them on demand whenever you want to. So Idris, I'll stay on board and take on any other questions you have. If anyone else wants to leave, thank you very much for coming out, and we'll talk to you again probably next week, or you'll see me on Friday for 5. Okay, see you later.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
You're welcome. Okay, Idris, I'm ready for you. You're on mute.
I'm exhausted with how do you say, I'm done with my sphere of influence, and I'm wondering, like, how do you reach general public?
For what purpose?
Like, prospecting.
Okay. So how many people were in your sphere of influence?
That's basically, I don't know, maybe 50 of them, 20 of them.
Okay, and you've called all 50 of them?
Yeah, basically.
No, Idris, what's basically mean? Did you call all 50 or not?
I call them and got their email, and every time I talk to them, they say, "Yeah, we'll let you know." Like as soon as I say I'm realtor with Century 21, they're turned off, like, you know, like the voice and the tone of voice change.
Yep.
You know? Like as soon as I'm telling them, hey, this is Idris, I'm gonna let you know that I'm with Century 21. I'm a realtor. The voice change, and then they don't. Most of them, they don't really help me. Like, you know, I went to the mosque last Friday, and I was talking to one elder guy, and then and I asked for his email and phone number, and then he told me that yeah, I have a condo that's rented, and I wonder if it is a good time to sell. And I asked him, you can give me the address, I give you market analysis of that condo and tell you how much it will sell. And then he said, I'll give it to you next week. And the next week when I was talking to him, he's like, he started talking to me, and then one other guy showed up and he just pushed me away and said, like, you can talk to him. It was like a very weird situation, you know? So like I got discouraged talking to my community so much that I want to hit the general public, you know. I just want to talk
Okay.
and call
Well,
people.
So you just, one of the things you have to think about when you're prospecting is it's kind of like dating. You can't kiss the girl too quickly or she pushes you away. So when you're talking to people, you can't just, like, the fifth word out of your mouth can't be real estate Century 21, do you want to buy a house? Right? It has to be, you know, how are you? How's the family? I met you at the mosque, blah, blah, blah. You got to find some commonality and develop a relationship with them. And then it's like, so what do you know, I'm just getting to know people. What is it that you do for a living, sir? And they're, you know, I'm a drywaller, I'm an engineer, I'm a whatever. They're going to tell you, and most likely they'll ask you the same question. So what do you do? Well, I sell real estate with Century 21. Oh, well, that's an exciting industry. It definitely is. I mean, with 2% interest rates and things are going crazy, and you make them come to you versus you force it onto them. Because if you're forcing it onto them, you're the pushy salesman, and you want to be the trusted individual. So you got to watch, you don't go right away and go to the close of, I'm a realtor, and if you want to buy or sell a house. That topic will come up, but it needs to come up over time, not over the first 3 seconds of the conversation. Yeah, 1 second here. We got, so Andrew's in here. He just wants to say something as well.
Hi, can you hear me okay? How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Can you hear him, Idris?
Yeah.
Oh,
Can
okay.
you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hey, so I used to have the same problem, Idris, when I first started. A book that I would really recommend is a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's probably one of the oldest books out there on sales. And it really demonstrates how when you tell someone you're a salesperson, the first thing they're thinking is, what does this person want from me? And they get scared and they don't want to talk to you anymore. So I would really recommend reading that book. It's on audiobook as well. And it really kind of goes in depth as to how a person wants to be interacted with in order to sell to them. I've read it probably 5 times in the past 4 years, and I wish I read it when I was a teenager. My mother recommended it to me because I'm kicking myself for not reading it sooner. But that's probably one of the best books that you can read that will help you with the problem that you're having right now.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So what was the name of it?
How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Okay.
It's one of the most famous sales books ever written.
Thank you, Andrew. Lisa, you're late to the party, girl. Do you have any questions, Lisa? And hopefully, are you thinking that this is the training for the website?
I think I'm on the wrong training session. I'm just looking. I have like 4 different meetings this morning in my calendar, and I think I clicked on the wrong one. So
yeah, this is Forms 101 with the new agents.
Okay, well, good luck, everybody, and I hope you have a great day.
Are you wanting the CRM one?
I think that's the one. Yeah, I see it now in my.
Yeah, it's at noon.
Oh, noon. Okay, awesome. Okay, thanks. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. When I started there, I'm like, going, why did she come? That's when Jackie came down here as well. I'm like, you don't need to be here. You know these forms. So, any other questions, Idris?
That was it. Thank you very much, Gary.
Okay, and Lynn, were you just here for moral support? You're still on mute, Lynn. Anyway, I'll let you go, Lynn, and I'm going to shut this off and stop the recording now. So everybody have a great week, and the next one starts at noon upstairs, or the web for the CRM if anyone's interested in that. And then we'll talk to you Friday for 5, and we'll talk to you Tuesday at the meeting. Have a good weekend. Bye for now.